And I have a limited amount of time, but I'm going to talk a little bit about why our organization exists, why we have to bail people out, what our results have been thus far, and what those results indicate about our cash bail system more broadly. So why the Bronx Freedom Fund exists. I think a lot of the problems that we talked about thus far, and that we'll hear more about later tonight, are very real for public defenders and for their clients. Those 44,000 people who are held in on bail, they have to suffer the psychological, emotional, physical trauma of sitting on Rikers Island, on the largest penal colony in the country. And they also have to deal with a lot of collateral consequences that don't always get talked about. So if you have a job and you're sitting on Rikers Island, unable to pay bail, then you will often lose that job, especially if you're in the Bronx. We're housed out of the South Bronx, which is the poorest congressional district in the country. So not only can people not make these low bail amounts, we're posting bail of $2,000 or less. Not only can people not make those bail amounts, they're also working minimum wage jobs where if they miss for a few days, they're fired and they have to go back to square one. People who live in public housing, their entire families can be evicted from that public housing if they're sitting in jail on bail. And remember, all of these are people who are entirely innocent in the eyes of the law, who haven't been convicted of anything, but they probably don't feel that way when they're sitting in jail. And people who are homeless, if they don't sign into their homeless shelter for 24 or 48 hours, whatever it might be, they forfeit their space in that shelter, and their entire families may be living on the streets. People who have children, if you are sitting in jail, then child services might say, you're in jail, you're not a great parent, and they might start the process of trying to remove that child from your custody. And these aren't, invented vague issues. These are things that we see every day in a public defender's office. So what the Bronx Freedom Fund does is we bail those people out. We just put up the money and get them out of jail. And the results we've seen thus far have been pretty remarkable. These people have bail set on them because they're deemed unlikely to come back to court. They're called flight risks. So they have to have bail set on them to come back to court, and then we bail them out. And rather than fleeing, about 96 or 97% of the people who we bail out end up showing up to all of their court dates. And all of your court dates doesn't mean often you come back for a week and then you're done. All of your court dates can mean, in the Bronx, in one of the most backlogged courts in the country, that you're coming back for months, for years. I think this week we had one of our clients, she was on her 19th court date over 28 months, and she's made all of those dates, and otherwise would have been sitting in jail on bail. So that's what we do. We bail people out, and I think part of what these results do is sort of fly in the face of the theory of why we need bail in the first place. The idea is that if you have skin in the game, if your money's on the line, then you're going to come back to court because you want your money back. These people have no skin in the game. It's our money and not theirs, and they're coming back anyway. And the other thing that happens with these cases is that the outcomes of the cases are totally and completely inverted. So when people are held in on bail, about 90% of the time, a lot of people here may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of knowledge in this room, they will plead guilty in order to get out of jail. And that's a very logical, rational decision. You're sitting in jail, you have the option of fighting your case, which means continuing to sit in jail, or pleading guilty, which means going home. A lot of people make that, what I think is a rational decision, and plead guilty. With our clients, they're able to fight their cases from home, with their families, with their lawyers, and over half of those cases end up being dismissed entirely. So rather than 90% of people pleading guilty, over half of the cases are dismissed. And I think that's a really powerful thing, that you have less jail time, fewer people taking convictions that carry criminal records, and more people returning to their jobs, returning to their homes, and returning to their families. And all this is a problem in the Bronx, but it's also a problem in a lot of other places. So a big part of what we're doing is helping people start bail funds in other places. I think you'll hear later from about the bail fund, and the New York City Council has started to try to get people out. And as the first charitable bail organization, we've been doing a lot of work to help people start in Brooklyn, across the state, and across the country. And I'm being told I have 1 minute, so I'm just going to conclude quickly by saying that I really want to return to that number of 44,000 people who are held in on bail. I think the fact that we're all here today is indicative and is good evidence of the idea that we're moving this conversation forward on bail. And I think the Bronx Freedom Fund is a part of that conversation. I think our results add a lot to that discussion, but while we're having that conversation and while we're moving the needle forward, there are thousands of people who are sitting in jail every day because they can't pay. The only reason they're in jail is they cannot pay. And I think it's just important to remember that all of those people are individuals with unique stories and unique set of circumstances. Last week, I bailed out a 50-year-old guy who was able to return to chemotherapy and trying to fight back to get his get back to work as a taxi driver. I've bailed out an 80-year-old guy. I've bailed out 16 and 17-year-old kids by the dozen who are able to return to high school, take their Regents exams, go back to living life as an adolescent. So I'll end there because I think we're about to see a short video of a bail fund client. Thank you.